Ah,
Ara. And stable. Good day, everyone. I am Shanat Kaikandia from Group 2. So today, we will be going to discuss about the assessment as an integral part of teaching. But before that, let's define first what is assessment. What is assessment? So assessment is a systematic process of gathering, interpreting, and acting upon data related to students' learning and experiences. So when we say assessment, it talks about gathering and organizing data about the students and interpreting the information in order to make educational decisions about students. Next. Why is assessment important? It provides valuable information about student learning. It determines whether or not the goals of education are being met, inform teachers regarding ways to adjust the curriculum and instruction to respond effectively to the learning needs of students. So, why do you think assessment is important? Assessment is important because through assessment, you are developing deep understanding. Why is assessment important? First, it determines whether or not the goals of education are being met. Third is it informs teachers regarding ways to adjust the curriculum and instruction to respond effectively to the learning needs of students. So why do you think assessment is important? Assessment is important because through assessment you are developing a deep understanding of what students know and understand in a form of test or oral recitation. So it provides you valuable information about student learning. It also determines whether or not the goals of education are being met because assessment enables teacher to determine whether the set objective are accomplished or not. Lastly, the reason why assessment is very important, it is because through assessment, teachers would be able to gather information about student learning, right? So teacher can reflect whether his or her teaching approaches are effective or not. So if the teacher found out that uh, his teaching strategy are not effective, so he can make adjustments of her teaching approaches and instruction to respond effectively to the students' learning needs. Do you get me? So, next is assessment in the context of teaching learning. So let's talk about diagnostic, formative, and summative. But first, let's talk about diagnostic assessment. So diagnostic assessment, it is a form of pre-assessment that allows teacher to determine individual students' prior knowledge, including misconceptions before instruction. In short, it is primarily used to diagnose what students already know and don't yet know in order to guide instruction. The results of diagnostic assessment also provide a basis for comparison to determine how much learning has taken place after the learning activity is completed. This is usually done by giving diagnostic pretest.
Evening, everyone. I am Ray Chaniga Castro, and uh, for the next assessment in the context of teaching learning is formative assessment. So, formative assessment takes place during instruction or during the formative process to provide to the teacher with information regarding how well the learning objectives of the given learning activity are being met. So, informative assessment, teachers keep an eye on students' progress to receive continuing feedback. It is to enhance their teaching and to also help children to learn more. So, with formative assessment, students are assisted in determining their strengths and weaknesses and the areas that requires more improvement. Similar to how students are assisted, teachers are also assisted in identifying the students' struggles and promptly addressing their problems. So, informative assessment, or also known as assessment for learning, because informative assessment this ensures that learning takes place. That's why it is also referred to as assessment for learning. Um, the teacher monitors the students' progress while they are also receiving instructions. So the teacher will immediately conduct study to assure that learning no to assure that
Classmate.
he or she learns and finds that the concept and the skills have not been understood. So the teacher will conduct kanang instructions or study to assure that kanang there is learning in that particular area, thus making it assessment for learning. So next is, how do teachers do formative assessment? So teacher can determine student level by understanding while teaching and by asking students questions. So how how do teachers do formative assessment? Teacher can determine students level by understanding while teaching ano, by teaching or by asking the students questions. So one of the benefits of using a tool for formative assessment is that it allows teachers to more efficiently use their time. Apps like Quizlet, kana, it is used in quiz format to provide real feedback to both students and teachers. So the next is, oh my god, siya nga next. It's mine, it's mine. The next is um, assessment in the context of teaching is summative assessment. So summative assessment used to evaluate student learning at the end of a defined instruction period, while formative assessment is referred to as assessment for teaching. Summative assessment is referred to as assessment of learning. So So again, summative assessment, this is used to evaluate students' learning at the end of the defined instruction period. And then while formative assessment is referred to as assessment for learning, summative assessment is referred to as assessment of learning. So in summative assessment, this often takes place at the conclusion of a project, course, semester, program, or in academic year, following diagnostic testing instruction and formative assessment. So in summative assessment, this shows how much learning occurred and how well the learning chapter or unit or the course outcomes were met. So in summative assessment, there are these are the basis for grades, and summative assessments are done through paper and pencil test. So in our previous kanang semester, we kanang talked about paper and pencil test and no paper and pencil test. So next is traditional assessment. Traditional assessment in are the most frequently used to evaluate students, rank them, and assign a final grade. So in traditional assessments, this generally involve the use tests, quizzes, and homework as the means for evaluation. Traditional assessment includes paper and pencil tests, as what I've said kanina, and it's either in selected response or in constructed response. So what is paper pencil and paper and pencil assessment? So paper and pencil assessment refers to traditional student assessment formats such as written test and also to standardized test that asks students to use pencil to fill in bubbles and a scannable answer. So in paper pencil test, um, these are kanang traditional student assessment formats that are used to kanang evaluate students, which are meant to measure memorized knowledge and kanang lower levels of understanding as compared with performance-based assessment, which is meant to measure the deeper understanding through skills and ability. So paper and pencil tests have two types to determine, which is the selected response, which asks students to select the correct answer from a list of options included the item. So these are the examples of selected response. These are kanang true or false, yes or no, then wrong or check or wrong. Next is constructed response, where this asks students to write or construct the correct answer. So for example, kanang is say problem solving and short answers.
Okay. Good day, everyone. I am Carlen Kabungkag. Today, I will refer to you what is authentic assessment and criterion reference assessment. So first, we will tackle what is authentic assessment. So the term authentic assessment was coined and formulated by Grace Wiggins in 1993. Grace Wiggins is a leading proponent of reform in testing. It is called authentic assessment because students' knowledge are assessed in context of real life situations. It is meant to focus on the impact of one's work in a real life and in real life situation as possible. The assessment requires student performance that makes in realistic encounters in life. Example of this is written test or writing an essays. So it is also known as non-traditional assessment and alternative. So alternative assessment because it offers students more choices than just taking a paper and pencil test, like multiple choice and written an essay. When we say the word alternative, it implies that there is another way of assessing learning other than the traditional test that we use in everyday or in our classroom. So next. So there are examples of authentic assessment. First is composing a song. Next is writing poem. 3 is enacting a drama. 4, playing a ball game. Creating a dance step. 6 is designing an address. So So those are example of authentic assessment because in answering and doing those tasks, it is really needed that you will do in a realistic or in a real situation, like in composing a song and writing poem. So when we write a poem and composing a song, you need to apply your skills and knowledge to have a good output about it. So next. So we go to what criterion reference assessment. So criterion reference assessment is comparing students' performance with refined performance standards. So it means that in criterion reference assessment, the student performance will based on the established standard by the teachers or from the instructor. With this kind of assessment, each student is compared directly to the standard without comparing from the standard of other students. A student score is not influenced by other scores. So it is absolute grading. So when we say absolute grading, it refers to a marking system where instructor pre-specify performance standard. So it means that in criterion reference assessment, it have standard that is followed. So absolute grading is inflexible, meaning if everyone gets below 59%, all students will fail, and teacher will not make an adjustment about it because it is already established and it is already set by the instructor. So next, miss. So there are example of criterion reference assessment. So number is driving school, LET or licensure exam for teacher, citizenship test, classroom assessment, competency-based assessment. So these are example of criterion reference assessment because the performance or the grade of the students or the people who take of this exam is based on the established standards, and their score will not affected by the performance of the other students or the other people who take the exam or the so there are example of criterion reference assessment. First is driving test, LET or licensure examination for teacher. 3 is citizenship test, classroom assessment. 5 is competency-based assessment. So those are example of criterion reference assessment because the scores or the performance of the people or the students who are take the exam are based on the standard that are given by the teachers or from the organizer. So the score or the performance or the grade of the people or the students will not be affected by the performance of the others. So it is the individual grade or score. So that's all for my report. Thank you.
And tonight I will be going to discuss first the norm reference assessment. Next slide, please. So first, let us know what is norm reference assessment. So in norm reference assessment, we compare a student's performance with the performance of other students. So the norm group not against the predetermined standard. So the main goal of this norm reference assessment is that through this, the teachers will be able to analyze the performance of the students. So kini siya diri ni siya makuan ang kuan compared to other students, which is this is norm reference. Is then also it will nang it will assess the students through standardized tests. So one of that example is, next slide please. So of the example of the norm reference assessment is, an example is comparing the performance of the seventh graders in reading in a particular school system to the performance of the nationwide group of the graders in reading. So through norm reference scores are generally reported as a percentile ranking. So there used to be a kanang national college entrance exam, for example. So in the Philippines in 1973 until it's in 1994, where students are given percentile rank. So norm reference kay makuan po niya siya sa percentile ranks. So as students who get a 99% rank in NCEE means that he belonged to the upper 1% and surpassed 99% of the NCEE examinees. So also, one example is a high school graduate who got a 75% rank, means to be belong to upper 5% and was above 75% of the examinees. So the meaning of this, so ang gikuan ni Caroline a while ago, is the criterion. So the difference between the two is the NRT, or the norm reference assessment, is or test will compare the individual results to the results of other children. While sa CRT, it compares result to the determined criteria, not compared to other children. So mo na siya kalayan sa koan norm and sa criterion. Norm is to other students, while criterion is like mo pass ka, mo fail ba ka, or mo succeed sa imong gikuan nga entrance exam. Unlike sa norm kay kanang comparing na siya sa other students. So I hope you get my point. And next slide please. So now I'm going to also to discuss the contextualized and decontextualized assessment. So first we have, next slide please. So contextualized assessment. So in contextualized assessment, the focus is on the student's construction of functional knowledge. It is the student's performance in their application of knowledge and skills in the real work context of the discipline area. So naiuban sa kay kanang maayo kayo og kanang isay, like for example, the students kanang have mastered subject verb agreement, kanang kabaw na kay siya sa mga sa rules sa subject verb agreement sa isay, but di siya kabalo unsa on siya pag-apply in real life situations, like for example kanang interviews, dili siya kabawan na. So one of that example is and then di siya kabaw sa real life situation, kanang makuan di siya sa real life situation ba, which is that is contextualized assessment. So next slide please. So let's move on to the contextualized assessment. So on the other hand, the contextualized assessment includes written exams which are suitable for assessing declarative knowledge and do not necessarily have a direct connection to a real life context. So wala siya connection sa real life context, more siya kanang like kanang essays, ay kanang no, kanang ang one of the examples sa decontextualized is like includes written exams, and mo na siya di siya kanang murag kung siya declarative knowledge ra gyud siya, wala siya nakuan sa real life situations. Mo na siya kaan the contextualized assessment. And I hope you'll get the contextualized and the contextualized assessment. So next.
So hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
So hello, my name is Nicolette C. Arnejo, and I'm now the next reporter. So is that establishing high quality assessment. So now, when can we say that assessment is assessment of high quality? We have listed here at least four qualities of assessment. So the first one is the quality assessment are in accordance with contemporary view of active learning and motivation. So this means that learners discover and construct meaning, set plan, and work to realize their goals, associate and link new information with existing knowledge in meaningful ways, think critically and creatively, develop self-monitoring skills, have positive, enthusiastically and internally motivated to learn, apply what we learn in the real world situations, and communicate effectively by Shanrock 2019. So the message is very clear that in order for that assessment to be called high quality, we have to give them the assessment that involves the learners themselves. So we have to involve them clearly, and also let's give them the chance to set their goals, to monitor their own learning and building their own self confidence, because the learners are intrinsically motivated to learn. High quality assessment are not just a meaningless reproduction of knowledge, or what you call this one, the linking of information to other information. So high quality assessment involves the learner in discovering and constructing meaning. They they plan, they work, they realize their goals, they associate information to other information, or especially the new information or other existing knowledge in their meaningful ways, in their own ways. So we allow the learners to learn by their own. We should give them the freedom to show the totally their knowledge at the same time their skills. So it says here that in order for an assessment to be quality, this assessment should be contextualized and not decontextualized. So if you say contextualize, it involves showing your skills. It involves application of knowledge area and skills in the real world situation. So if that is the type of assessment that you have prepared for your students, then you are preparing a high quality assessment. So second, assessment of high quality is valid. So when can we say that the assessment is valid? What is supposed to or intended to be assessed? A teacher must be true to objectives, because if you are preparing a lesson, you have to prepare clear objectives, and it becomes easier if we attain the objectives we make. So the third one is it is reliable. Assessment of high quality is reliable. When can we say that assessment is reliable assessment? Assessment is reliable when the test produce consistent scores. For example, if you give a test in the certain topic in math or Filipino or English, and find out that half of the class have high scores and half have somewhat low scores, then you are retest and the same result, the first half got the high scores and then the second half got the lowest scores. So meaning the assessment that you have prepared is reliable. So if the opposite happens, like you gave the first try those who scored high and the first day got the low scores in the retest or the second test, and um that's who got the low scores in the first take. So So the program will always go down to the teacher on how we're preparing the lesson, including the assessment tools that we are intent to give these students. So the fourth one is next reporter.
Ha, palihog lang ko gidate. So next is assessment of high quality to be fair. So when we say assessment to be fair is assessment the skills and knowledge being assessed. Fairness does not imply that everyone is given the same recognition, but it does reaffirm that we all receive equal opportunity. So next, please. Next, please. So first is using at least some performance-based assessment. So when we say that using at least some performance-based is this indicates that the use of objective tasks like multiple choice, matching type, and alternate response is no longer. So the environment so that they should give us instead, businesses are requesting what academics refers to as a modern liberal education, which emphasizes more expansive thinking along with more practical application. This not implying that we should stop using objective tests for evaluation. So performance-based evaluation is not all that complemented by objective tests. So it is by using objective alone, won't replace it. So next is examining higher level cognitive skills and emphasizing integrated rather than isolated skills. So when we say that examining higher level of cognitive skills is they encourage students to think beyond literal questions. Higher education order question promote critical thinking skills because this type of questions expect students to apply, analyze, synthesize, and evaluate information instead of simply recalling facts. So studies have shown that holding students accountable for higher order thinking by using assignments and intellectual work and critical thinking increases student motivation as well as achievement. So the 21st century skills were developed because it is often thought that students in this century need a wide variety of skills in addition to the academic standards that have been adopted in many states. So third is using multiple assessment method. So this current tendency in student evaluation is to use a variety of techniques, including multiple choice, essays, interviews, project portfolios, and self-assessment. So it must be emphasized once more that we cannot abandon objective tests that assess simple recall. So this test complements real assessment tools by requiring only simple recall. So fourth is having high performance standards, including world-class standards for interpreting assessment results. So one level of performance is too lower than one's level of ambitions. So therefore, encouraging children to meet high performance standards is wise. So let's set the bar high. So next, please. It is involving students in all aspects of assessment. So this involving students is it is the effective of the students are active in all phases of teaching learning process. So from setting expectations to monitoring progress of instruction to determining the extent to which expectations are realized. So six is making standards and criteria public rather than private and secretive. So to this statement, these models is excellence that are in align with the criteria are displayed to give a clear picture of the desired performance. So when we see that public rather than private and secretive is that to evaluate criteria are presented and explained at the beginning. So it could get rid of the students' resistance to assess on their fear of them. So lastly is using computer as a part of assessment. So computer allows for the creation of question banks, which enable a different question of equal difficulty to be delivered of each learner. So students may receive rapid feedback to electronic marking. So computers can help with the recording of test findings and the statistical analysis. So that's all for our report.
Thank you everyone for your participation.